Probably worth introducing myself before talking about marketing. So you can think of my background in decades, because I've got a few. And it also seems like about every 10 years I get bored and change industries. So decade one, I was in the army, so went straight from school to Sandhurst to join the Royal Engineers, get sponsored through university. So I'm an engineer, spent 10 years traveling around the world, building things and blowing things up. Decade two was big business, went from the army to McKinsey for a few years as a strategy consultant, from there to Coca-Cola, did various sales and marketing jobs in Greece, Poland, and India. So that's decade two. Decade three was kind of big tech, ad tech. So joined Google, back here in London, spent a few years there ending up as a COO of Europe, and then did various tech CEO jobs around the world, mostly in the US. And decade four, which isn't over, started in 2019, where I decided I didn't want one job. I wanted to do lots of things in my life. Turns out that's called a portfolio career. My portfolio career has about three things. One is working with CEOs and founders, helping them tackle the crazy pace of change in the world. The other is working with investors, helping them do the same thing. And the final one is a bit of public speaking. But in parallel, during lockdown, a lot of my friends wanted career advice. Effectively, they wanted to launch portfolio careers their own. So I founded the Portfolio Collective, which is a community of independent professionals, and we help each other have successful portfolio careers. Enough about me. You can see the little faces on the globe. I've lived in 9 countries, now based in London. Okay, so that's me. Let's talk about marketing. Marketing is tough, really tough. And a lot of marketers, you talk to them off the record for sure, especially over a beer, will say, it's crazy, my head's exploding. And it's not just marketers who are confused, it's CEOs, it's CFOs, it's boards. Everyone's saying, what is marketing these days? And there's surveys that say, CEOs are not happy with marketers. There's marketers say, I'm confused by my job. So the first thing to say is, it's okay to be confused. Everyone else is. And if they're not, they're lying. So imposter syndrome is okay. Confusion's okay. But let's try and work out, how do we do our best, as it were. Along the way with this crazy stuff, when I was living in the US, I had a lot of friends who were CEOs, and they kept coming to me saying, Ben, I'm thinking of firing my CMO. Can you help me find another one? And I said, look, why are you asking me? I'm running a tech company, basically. But anyway, along the way, started chatting with, not for jobs, chatting with lots of CMOs who are friends, and wrote a book called Marketing for CEOs. So the idea is try and educate CEOs about how they can help CMOs succeed. I'm not expecting you to remember this chart. If any of you want to really make your heads explode, go to a site called Luma something. Anyway, search for Lumascapes. They're actually investors who look into marketing technology, advertising technology, and they map all the companies they can find in any space. This is the marketing technology slide. There's about 15 others on their site. It's crazy, and it changes every year. So again, you're forgiven for being overwhelmed by just quite how much tech there is out there that you could use to improve your marketing. And the keywords and KPIs that we're expected to track are just exploding. There's more and more data, but more data means more keywords, more dashboards, more complexity. And ultimately, as I say, one of the key themes in marketing is our heads are exploding. With all these different things. And I'm sure you've all thought of this list and many more, but influencer marketing, what are we doing? Should we be doing anything? How does that work? All the tech platforms we've mentioned, the fact that every customer's got a mobile phone changes a lot. There's video streaming everywhere. How do we work with that? How do you track ROI with all the touch points all over the place? Personalization, we all know we should be doing it left, right, and center, but it's hard. AI, I'm sure you're all under pressure to do more with AI, but exactly what? Because it's still, the rules are being written. As it were, chatbots, it goes on. Basically, our heads are exploding. So hopefully, I've kind of explained some of the problems that you guys are facing. Let's spend the rest of the time talking about maybe what we can do about it. So how do we untangle the complexities and try and create mental frameworks that help us not get overwhelmed and actually make meaningful progress towards building a great marketing organization? So one of the biggest frameworks I think helps always say, how do we build a better marketing organization is saying we're on a journey. And we're on a journey from, let's say, 10, 20 years ago of mass marketing, simplistically one ad for everything. It was never that simple, but in essence, if you could afford TV ads, you have a TV ad, you make a print and radio and outdoor version of that ad, and that's it. Maybe one or two others. We've been going through various changes. The next stage was like multi-channel. So you sort of have your offline for offline sales, your laptop for laptop sales, mobile ads for mobile sales. Not quite that simple, but again, sort of multi-channel. We're getting into a point where most companies are at the omni-channel. We know there's lots of different paths. We know these different elements of marketing touch on each other, but it's still getting more confusing. And then the next stage, I'm guessing no one's fully there. If you are, I would love to meet you afterwards, is people-based marketing, whereby at some stage in the future, every single customer or potential customer is going on their own journey. Literally, with every single customer, we get to know them better and we take them on a journey that makes sense. And if ever I kind of think I'm confused, I'll kind of say, where are we on that journey and what's next? And you can't get to perfection, but you can make progress. So, people-based marketing. First of all, what can we learn about our customers? And there's loads, and I'm sure you can think of more. I try to keep the slides as simple as possible in a complicated space, but what is each person's relationship with our brand? What are their past purchases? What are the site visits they've used? Have they called a call center? Have they met a sales rep, etc.? What's their relationship with competitors? That also matters. What's their predicted lifetime value? When we think about them, in B case, their companies, what could they spend over time? How much money could that make? What's the right journey to take them on? What's the likely sequence of purchases? What are they like to buy first, second, third, fourth, or in bundles? What's their role in the buying process? Because obviously it's different people have different roles in the buying process. It's not always just one person. What's their budget? What's the budget timing? What's their process of decision making? All really important. What's the sort of optimal next interaction? Should we ask them a question, serve them ads, send them an email, have a chat, meet them at an event, find some way to fake a serendipitous moment. Whatever it might be, how do we get through to them with an appropriate interaction that takes them on a journey? And it goes on from there. So, increasingly, you can gather this or something similar to this for every customer. It takes time, but it can be done. The other thing we really need to think about is the economics. And this is where you can really start getting on the same wavelength as CEOs, CMOs, boards, etc. Is not just talk about the brand, the message, the technology, but also the economics. And hopefully this is teach people to suck eggs. You can get way more complex than this if we wanted to. But in my mind, the core framework for marketers, especially if you're trying to talk to the CEO or CMO or CFO, is customer lifetime value. And simplistically, how long do we think this customer relationship will be? What do we think they'll buy over that time? What will the margins on all those purchases be? And then what will it cost to sort of manage that relationship? Not just the acquisition cost, but the cost of the relationship over time. And obviously it's sales and marketing, because typically you have a bit of both. In some companies it might just be marketing, but typically it's both. And if you can understand that, and clearly you can understand that at the average level, I'm guessing most of you can understand that in certain segments. But over time, we need to understand that one customer at a time. Again, hard but doable, but it's a journey. And as we know, not all customers are created equal. So what are we looking for? What's the perfect customers? Are the ones that don't cost much to acquire and have enormous value. And that's where you're kind of, the product selling itself. They're kind of like inbound leads with, high value customers. They're the dream, they're the stars on this chart. The ones we don't want are the ones that cost a fortune to acquire and don't generate much revenue. And then clearly there's a whole load in the middle, and it won't just be one group, there'll be more and more. But the ones that are higher volume, relatively predictable economics, but you know what you can acquire them for, what the customer lifetime value will be over time, etc. And the key is to go out and, again, for every single, in a perfect world, every single customer or potential customer, you map them on this chart or something similar. Now, how do we do all that? Ultimately, I keep saying it's a journey. It really is a journey, but we really do need to build the marketing team the tech, the data, infrastructure, the processes to win over time. If we can make good progress every quarter, we can build something great. And if it takes 2-3 years, not a problem. If it takes 10, hopefully not a problem, but the world is changing pretty fast. But if you can build a plan whereby every single quarter, everything, the key things get better, you're probably heading in a good direction. So this one's a little bit of an eye chart, but I'll talk you through it. And for those of you that aren't colorblind like me, I'm mildly colorblind, hopefully I'll be able to pick it out, but you'll be able to sort of see the process. But clearly with each sort of element of what you're building, you need to think about where are we now, where could we be next, where will we be at some stage in the future. And to sort of pick on them one by one, if you look at on the now, the simple segmentation of customers, maybe, and again, I'm sort of roughly second guessing. I talked to a lot of CMOs, so my guess is the norm in this room is you've got some kind of simple segmentation of customers now. Where would it go next? Maybe dynamically redefining segments based on what you learn, whether it's a daily, weekly, monthly basis, etc. Where we'll be in the future is maximizing the lifetime value for each customer. You almost stop talking about segments one day because each customer is its own segment, as it were. With KPIs, I'm betting you all take a good look at your KPIs in meetings, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, etc. Potentially over time, we actually have some automation coming out of those KPIs. Some of the KPIs will feed straight into triggers that lead to actions. So not everything has to be a decision made in a meeting, but can be an automated decision. And then over time, probably it's going to be AI optimized data, nudges, interactions, etc. over time. With customer journeys, right now you've probably defined the most important customer journeys. Over time, you maybe optimize those, have more of them over time, but eventually at some stage in the future, every customer is going on their own journey, and the journey adapts based on what you learn with every interaction. And then finally, the team. How do you build your team over time? I'm sure right now you're all feeling you've got skills gaps or capacity gaps. Some will be saying, it takes my whole team just to do the day job. I don't have time for the fancy stuff. Others might say, well, we just need to improve our AI skills, our data skills, or whatever it might be. But I'm sure you've all got gaps. So where are those gaps? Have you defined them? And have you worked out how to fill them? Over time, you'll fill the gaps with either new hires or maybe experts or consultants, whatever. And then over time, there'll probably be a mixture of in-house team, experts, consultants, and some AI. And there are people saying one day org structures will actually have humans and AI on the org structure. I'm not sure that's the right answer. It's kind of cool to think about, though. But what is your plan for your team over the next few years so that all the core things improve every quarter forever? One of the core things we talk about a lot with AI, or the potential of AI, is personalized messaging at scale. And this isn't the only part of it. Clearly, there's all sorts of other clever things going on. But we're going to have a debate in the panel next. But how can AI help us personalize messaging at scale without being samey, without being generic, without hallucination? Because it's hard, and not many people have cracked it yet. But it takes more than just Google or Meta making some great AI. It takes a whole load of stuff. The first one is the segmenting the audience. Is how do we keep gathering more and more of those data points in order to understand the customer better, in order to trigger a more personalized message? And whether you go from 10 segments to 10,000, these are just example numbers here, from 10 to 1,000, from 10 to 1 million, depends on how many potential customers you have. But ideally, over time, it gets personalized. Tailoring content. How much do you tailor content? How do you keep within brand guidelines? How do you make sure that that you don't get sort of crazy hallucinations? Personalizing the experiences over time. So can you have automated landing pages as well, so that as people come in, depending on what journey they've come through, they come to different landing pages? I know you can for that because some people in the room are doing it. And ultimately, can you continually and dynamically shape the journey? It's not a simple funnel anymore. It's a long-term journey with people coming in the funnel, going back out again, interacting in all sorts of different ways over time. One of the interesting things for me, as part of the prep for this, is I read a report from Informa Tech Target around what some of you guys are doing. There's a survey they ran recently, finding out who's doing what. Now, I won't go through these one by one because the people in the room are more expert than me, but most of you in the room are practicing some of these new best practices. Whether it's precision engagement, real-time signal-based content and adaptation, personalized journeys, etc. So my key point here is you've got some great opportunities to network today. In this room, there's a lot of cool people doing a lot of cool stuff. So if you're not sure what to ask, say, what marketing innovations are you up to? What are you doing to personalize journeys? How are you making it all work? You'll probably get some really interesting answers because in essence, people in this room are doing some really cool stuff. Here's a fun example. It's B2C. I know most people, if not all people in the room, are B2B. But I know one of the things on a lot of people's minds, including most of the CMOs I talk to, is chatbots. What do we do with chatbots? And to be honest, in B2B, the biggest question is obviously how much of my call center do I move to a chatbot? How much do I keep as humans? What's the journey? And again, I'd argue you have to just go on a journey, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, whatever, of working out the right balance of humans and chatbots. But here's just a fun example on the B2C side. So I actually buy most of my wine through a chatbot called Wine Drops. And there's actually a person within Wine Drops called Johnny, who is actually a real person, but they could have made up the name. Just it turns out to be the founder of the company. And how did I sort of discover it? I was basically, one day, I can't remember, it was either Facebook or Instagram, saw an ad for a very fancy, well, I say fancy for me, but a sort of a nice red wine, 95 points. The ad said something like normally £50, today £35. And there was a button that said learn more. And I clicked on the button, it flicked me into WhatsApp, and it told me more about the wine. And it said, how many do you want? And I just put 6. And it said, can we use this credit card? You pulled it from Apple Pay, the default credit card. Can we use this address? I guess Meta had it. I don't remember giving it to them, but I wasn't spooked. I'm not that spooked by these things. But then I bought it. But then it said, tell us more about you. What's your price point? When do you drink wine? Is it with food? Is it with friends? What are some of your favorite wines you've ever drunk? When's your birthday? All sorts of stuff. And it was just literally chatty. And now they come to me with all sorts of interesting offers. Can be daily, weekly, whatever, and sometimes I buy, sometimes I don't. But I get better advice from that chatbot than I've ever had from someone in a wine shop. And I probably buy 80% of my wine from a chatbot. And this is a basic one. It's text-based. Well, there is some personality in the text, but one day it could be voice. One day maybe you pick your own avatar because you want the person with the French accent or whatever it might be, but, if you're buying wine. But basically, there's a long way to go with chatbots. But just if you want an example, I think we can, often in B2B marketing, look at B2C and say, what can I learn from there to bring across to B2B, at least for inspiration. Okay, so action planning. I've been told you guys all love to plan. I love to be as action-oriented as possible. Hopefully you'll go away with a long to-do list from today, from all the various sessions. What would I do if I was a B2B marketer in this day and age? First of all, I would start with the team and capabilities. And it's probably something like a 3-year plan. I think 5 or 10 is too long. I think 1 or 2 is probably not realistic. I'd love to be proved wrong on that. Maybe I make a 2-year plan knowing some things will slip. But in essence, what do I think my team looks like in, say, 3 years' time? And if you can't think that far ahead, do it 2 years. But what are the people? What are the skill sets? What's the role of AI in that team? What should be full-time employees? What should be part-time? What should be agency? What should be in-house? Whatever it might be. And basically then audit, well, what have I got? And then it's really straightforward. In what sequence will I fill the gaps? Now, you might find you need more money. I'm guessing you all will, because I think personally marketing will grow despite AI, because I think the opportunity, the revenue opportunity to really personalize everything the way I talked earlier will generate so much more revenue. It will justify a much higher spend on marketing. But it will be different. Some of the roles we used to do will be different. Some will be gone, but other new roles will come along. Customer data. Clearly, data is the lifeblood of everything that that we're talking about here. You can't personalize without knowing your customers. So, what is the data plan? What do we know now? How do we store it? How accessible is it? What are the core use cases that we need to understand? What are the data points we would like to know about our customers? How do we gather them? How do we gather it? And so basically, again, whether it's a a 3-year plan, 2-year plan, but something that's sort of tangible but doesn't expect everything to happen in 3 to 6 months. How will you move from segmentation to personalization? Now, again, we all know one day it's personalization, but how, just what's the next step? And yet, how do we sort of get on a journey where every quarter we've got more segments, more personalization, et cetera? Experimentation. What are you going to test? We all know in marketing we should test things every quarter. Sometimes when times are tight, those budgets get cut or the team doesn't have time. You need to find time. And again, this is where getting the buy-in of the CEO, the CFO, the board is pretty handy so that they don't go striking a line through those tests that you need to do. Getting buy-in, absolutely critical. If you don't get buy-in, then ultimately marketing might still be seen as a cost or something you can trim when times are bad, or just generate sales. Today that's all I care about. Clearly you need to get buy-in for the journey that you're going on. And then finally, customer lifetime value. How are you going to keep understanding the economics of each customer and predicting it better and learning as you go? So why is it so important? As we know, innovation is always important, adaptation is always important. I would argue the pace of change in the world is getting faster and faster than we've ever seen before. And I think a lot of that is driven by AI. AI can write code faster, beta tests happen faster, changes happen faster. And if you want an economic reason, and this is, again, something you can take to CEOs, CFOs, et cetera, the cost of every interaction with your customers is probably going to get more expensive forever. I used to hear, I don't hear it so much anymore, Meta pricing, LinkedIn pricing, Google pricing, it can't go any higher. It just won't work. No, yes, it will. It will keep going higher forever. And it will grow faster than inflation forever. Simple example here. This is real data from a sample of about 200 companies in the US. In 2013, the average cost of a mobile app install was $1.50. It's now $15. It's 10x in 12 years. That's about 38% a year. Now, obviously, this is just one example, but it's a pretty stable sample of companies. But why? Because back then, no one knew what the customer lifetime value was. Back then, targeting was weak. Back then, mass marketing was the way people did stuff. It was kind of, with current standards, pretty pathetic, really. But over those 12 years, every single company and every platform has got better and better at segmentation, targeting, personalization, understanding customer lifetime value, predicting customer lifetime value, working out people not to target because they're going to be a waste of money, working out the right people to target, et cetera, winning people back when they churn. It just has got better and better every year to the point where you end up with the cost of app installs growing 38% a year for 12 years in a row. Now, by the way, I'm not saying it'll be 38% a year for 12 years in a row, but it will be significantly above inflation for the foreseeable future. So we all need to get better. And one way to sort of think about that is to say, let's assume the average price of an ad or an email open, whatever it might be, goes up by 15% a year, every year for the next 10 years. It's not unfeasible. That means we, as marketers, need to increase the ROI per ad serve by 15% or more every year for 10 years in a row. Otherwise, over time, we won't be able to afford to talk to customers. And that's effectively a death sentence. Anyway, don't want to end on a gloomy note, so hopefully you got some really happy questions for me. And I don't know if they've been coming in on the QR code, but I'd be happy to answer some questions. And by the way, it is fun, marketing.
How can AI improve marketing in terms of lead scoring? My organization is struggling with the volume of leads, missing some great opportunities.
Yeah, so it's a good question. We could probably talk about that for hours. The summary is, I'll give you a quick answer. I saw one of the companies I work with has done something similar recently. What they've tried to do is work out all the factors in the past. Now, obviously, past and future don't always link, but they've looked at all their existing customers and said, what was it that basically made them convert, et cetera, or indicated as part of the process likelihood to buy, et cetera. And then they've tried to turn that into a sort of an AI engine that as leads come in, they say, right, okay, let's crawl, I think it was LinkedIn, maybe let's work out the headcount. That's an indicator of size. Let's work out the time on site. That's an indicator of intent. But there's sort of, they had a factor with, I think it's not overly sophisticated, like 8 or 10 things, where they say, these factors seem to matter, score them against these factors. Now that's an example. I think there's probably better ways. I'm guessing people in the room have seen even better ways of doing it. But in essence, it's trying to sort of, the main thing I've seen is look at the past and use it to score the present. But if there are people who've done a better job, I'd love to hear either now or in the breaks.
For those of us keen to do something new, but facing tight budgets and limited support, what's your advice on pushing forward?
So I'd come back to the whole, you need to get buy-in. You can't sort of say marketing's for marketing and the others won't understand it, or marketing's only about lead gen this quarter. Yeah, I think you need to get buy-in for the journey. And so I would find a champion on the board, ideally the CEO, it might be the CFO, might be someone else on the board, and say, right, let's talk about where is marketing in 2 years, 3 years? How much more can it deliver if we go on this journey? How much will the journey cost? Maybe a slightly bigger team, maybe a bit more tech, maybe a bit more experimentation. But in essence, if we spend 10, 20% more a year, I'm making up the number, but if you've got your plan, you can do it, then we can actually develop faster and deliver more. So I think it's very hard to say, I'm just going to take 10% of my budget, deliver 10% less leads, and do a test and hope the board gets what I'm doing. I think you need to get buy-in as part of the process.
We talk about like people-based marketing and kind of like one-to-one marketing. What do you do about a buying committee? So obviously not just one person has the entire budget of not one person.
I think I'm getting 2 of these here.
What do you do about a buying committee?
So with that, I think there's a couple of things. One is that's probably a sales and marketing rather than just a marketing thing. The other is, can you identify all those people and somehow get them all into your target audience? In a perfect world, you target them probably with different messages, messages. Like some of the senior people are never going to probably read an email, but they do need to understand the brand, whatever it might be. Whereas some of them, the people whose job is to do the due diligence, they'll probably read every email and take every meeting on offer. So it's probably, let's say there's 5 decision makers, you probably need to say, who are those 5? Can we actually identify them, put the name of them, get their email address, and then treat them separately? If you can't, you could, in theory, just get them all in your audience and target them all with the same stuff, but you might annoy some, and you might over-deliver to some and under-deliver to others. So ideally, it's still personalized marketing, but with a sort of account-based marketing approach. It's like, there's 5 people here that belong to one customer, or 10 people belong to one customer.
I have a question. It's a bit of a buzzword, but what's your thoughts on what does thought leadership mean to you? Because I see a lot of companies using it.
Yeah.
So is thought leadership to influence a customer? Is it bringing in an analyst to influence a CEO? Like, what do you see as thought leadership? Some people are saying it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to it, and in general, I'm a big believer in it. If you're, but actually, I was going to say just B2B, but even in B2C, it can count. But definitely in B2B. It really helps if you're seen as the smartest people in the room on a subject. It doesn't have to be a whole industry. That's probably too ambitious unless you're like Microsoft or someone. But basically, if you're seen as thoughtful, or it could be articles, could be videos, could be short, snappy posts on social media. It could be white papers. I think the key is you need to say, what do we want to be seen as really smart and thoughtful on? And then, what does that look like? And that sounds a bit generic, which I hate, but obviously there's a lot of different companies in the room here, and saying, okay, if that's the subject, what are in SEO terms, you might say, what are the 5 or 10 keywords we want to appear on page 1 of Google? It's not as simple as that, but that's one way of thinking of it. And then you say, okay, how would we, I'll stick with the Google theme, but then we'll play out from there. How would we get page 1? What would the article be? What would the video be? What would the infographic be? Who do we need to refer to us to get the authority? How do we keep it refreshed? Things like original data sets are good. Now, just to quickly carry on the SEO theme, right now SEO in the world of AI is changing fast too. So in my mind, I think the value of text in content has gone down a bit because AI will steal it, quite frankly, and rewrite it. It's the other the stuff where AI is not going to make a video for you, or at least not yet. They're not going to make an infographic for you. They're probably not going to nab your proprietary data without giving you a quotation or a link. And so it's like, how do you get beyond the word? Now, nothing wrong with words. They're great. They help stitch all the rest together. But is it video, is it infographic, is it data sets or whatever that help you do that? But then the key part to your point around is it meetings and stuff is how do you make sure the right people read it? And then obviously, because page one of Google's fine, but only the people doing a search will actually read it. So how do you get to people not doing it? And that might be client meetings, it might be get on stage, it might be write a book, whatever it takes to get through to the audience.
So what do you think for the future of people-based marketing if users obviously control their own consent? And with Google Analytics, for example, you're seeing sort of 30% accuracy on some figures because people are not opting into Google consent or not sharing analytics. In our own databases, we have a large percentage of people that have not opted in.
So ultimately the dream obviously is get as many people as you can opted in, because then once you've got people's email address or other unique data points, you can take them on this perfect journey and do perfect measurement. I think the world's always going to be messier than that, unfortunately. I'd love to think one day, everyone will. But the first thing is, how can you get a higher opt-in rate? Now, some of that can come to brand, trust, thought leadership, etc. So it's just a benefit of thought leadership, especially if you've got lots of cool stuff to share, is you get people to say, yeah, I'd like to hear more. They want to get your content. They'll also get your sales pitches, obviously, in a way that isn't spammy. But beyond that, you're going to have to do what we always do, which is target people based on the content they consume, based on sort of any other indicators we can, retarget people where we need to, potentially license third-party data where it's helpful, etc. And sort of and that's where sort of you need to bring in all the data about your customers into one. Ultimately, your CRM system is the source of truth. But maybe only 30% of that came from yourselves and the rest came from other data sources to help you know those people better. It's messy though. Yeah. Okay, thank you.